KFAN.
Hey, it is Guy Germain. I'm from the internet. I had a lovely argument with my friends, or who I thought were my friends last night. The argument is this. I believe Kwesi has to move up and pick the rightful heir to the purple throne instead of just sitting back and take whatever falls to him. We hired him to be the guy. You got to pick the guy. You got to find the guy, Kwesi. You got to let Kwesi cook. That is all, PA. Have a great Friday.
My man, also you have a great Friday, and that talkback was generated by the free iHeartRadio app. You'll find a baby microphone. You have 30 seconds to formulate NFL draft-related opinions, and they just very well could be played back during the Friday football feast, which is at Buffalo Wild Wings Savage today. It's PA and Charch, and now we're happy to be joined by somebody who was on the radio show within the last few weeks. His name is Thor Nystrom. He has a website, thornystrom.com, and he works with the NFL draft and as an analyst for college football also.
And most importantly,
Fantasy Football Weekly. I was going to get to it, but that's okay.
I jumped the gun on you on that.
That's fine.
Just thought the order was out of order a little bit. That's
Thor Nystrom, ladies and gentlemen, take it away.
Thor Nystrom. We had you on a month ago to talk about J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy. Now, at the time, you were very high on McCarthy. You wanted to, and as a lifelong Viking fan, it sounds like you want to find a way for the Vikings to get to McCarthy. What's changed in the last month, if anything?
Well, his stock has gone up for sure. You know, you had the great combine throwing session. You had the sixth fastest three cone time, regardless of position, when he weighed in 17 pounds heavier than his Michigan bio, which the athleticism was confirmed. The size concerns were negated at that point. And then, of course, he got the chance to interview with people. He's a very smart kid. Everyone in the Michigan program raves about him. And, of course, that Michigan staff last year that won the national title, they are now dotted around the NFL.
Now, so your impression on McCarthy, where do you have McCarthy ranked among the quarterbacks?
He is my QB3 and number 3 overall on my big board.
Number 3 overall.
And that big board is there are 500 player comps is the best way to put it. And looking at Thor's Twitter at Thor KU it's all over the initial stages of the Twitter feed. Either people complimenting Thor or thanking him for putting it out. But nevertheless, it's at fantasypros.com/Thor500. What is this? 500 player comps. I mean, I'm not a subscriber, so I couldn't get in. So I tried to look at it, but I couldn't get into it. So explain to me and everybody else what it is.
It's my 500 player board, and every guy I give a comp to. So 500 player comps. We also have the RAS scores on there for everyone that qualified for the RAS score, the athletic adjusted composite that they give, and then the heights and the weights. Try to keep it to that, and I try to make it so that it's something that people can print off for their draft party.
Yeah.
So you could cross off names.
It.
PA, when I was a kid, the only way that we could get draft boards to follow along, it was on the back of draft magazines. And usually those big boards only went 50 deep.
Yeah.
I always wanted a bigger one. So I figured when I started doing this, I'd do a 500 player deep one. And I also love player comps. So I figured why not toss a player comp on all 500 guys?
Yeah. So for those who don't understand player comp, what does that mean?
You're basically trying to evoke for the audience, put a totem in their head of this prospect who is entering the NFL, an NFL player that their career is going to resemble, that they resemble as a player, and also the size, the height, and their athleticism, someone that they compare to.
Okay.
So for J.J. McCarthy, since we were just talking about him, who is your comp for J.J. McCarthy?
For J.J. McCarthy, I comp him to Rich Gannon. And you know, not all player comps are perfect. Rich Gannon, that would be at the apex of Rich Gannon. Of course, Rich Gannon was
he won MVP.
Yeah, and he was a late developer, of course.
Yes.
J.J. McCarthy just won a national title for an NFL head coach at 20 years old. So that part of it is a little different, but their games are very similar frames. The throwing on the run thing with that athletic profile.
What about Drake May?
Drake May, I have him QB4 and number 8 on my big board. My comp for him, I call him Carson Pence, which is a combination of Carson Palmer and Carson Wentz.
Right. And why?
Usually I just give the one guy for him. I don't love to do the mashups, but there's elements, people will comp him. You see the Justin Herbert thing with him or the Josh Allen thing for him, which I disagree on, both with the high level howitzers of the arm. I love Drake May's arm. I don't think it's quite to that degree. And also the athleticism. I think that's a little bit overblown. I don't think you're going to get quite that rushing utility that you're going to get from, for instance, Josh Allen with Drake May when he goes to the next level. He's a tough kid for sure. You're going to get the stuff with him around the goal, maybe too tough sometimes. Like he will take the shot and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Around the goal line and some RPO keeps, he can do stuff like that. But I don't think you're going to get quite that. That part of his game evokes more Wentz for me. In the pocket, if he hits his ceiling, I think it looks a lot like Carson Palmer.
Well, Palmer out of USC, strict pocket guy with the big arm.
Yes.
Now, let's not forget with Carson Wentz, before that Sunday at the LA Coliseum, when he ripped up his ACL, Carson Wentz's career changed as much as anybody I've ever seen from a single injury. Carson's trajectory, Bismarck go crazy. He was on the fast track, right?
He sure was. Yeah. And it did change things for sure.
The day of the injury, 1 minute before that injury, he was the likely MVP at that stage of the season.
Wow.
Week 8 or something, whenever that happened.
Yeah.
Back to Drake May for a second. And Paul, I don't know if you've seen this in the last few days. The betting odds for pick number 2 have swung to Drake May,
really,
as the betting odds leader for pick 2.
Wow, Jake.
His late steam is serious. I love Drake May. I like him even more than Thor.
Yeah.
He's my number 2 quarterback. I love the fact that he has succeeded with very little help around him. Like every play you're watching Drake May, and he is finding ways to overcome adversity, whether it's a receiver who's not open, an offensive line that's incredibly leaky. Dude is just a gamer. He overcame so much with so little talent around him at UNC. I like the processing. I love the mobility. I love that he keeps his eyes downfield. Yes, he has a slower release than I wish he had. But, man, I'm ready to give that up for the other things. And if, Caleb Williams is not finding his way to the Vikings. If I could pick another quarterback that I want the Vikings to find a way to go get, it's Drake May.
Yeah, and let me say this for him. The high-level traits are absolutely there, especially as the passer. I see everything you're seeing with that charge. I have some nitpicky concerns, with regards to being under pressure. The release sort of goes in conjunction with that. But there are things that can potentially be worked on. The thing with the glitching once or twice a game with the decision-making process, those are things where I would like him to sit at the beginning of the season, irregardless of where he goes. He gets into a good decision with a good coaching staff that can help him correct that, have a plan when he gets under duress, maybe expedite the process a little bit without going YOLO in those decisions, in those moments. I think you're going to have something on your hands there, but you and I see the ceiling, I think, very similarly.
Well, help me with this, because I haven't watched it, and it's come up frequently 9 to noon of late. If you believe, say, Kevin O'Connell, or most coaches, if not all coaches, their first and foremost trait they require from a quarterback would be accuracy. I did I was on Sirius NFL Radio yesterday chatting with Todd Haley, former head coach and offensive coordinator, about that. And it's with Todd, and then with 9 to noon last week, Bo Nix was it's like if you just look at the numbers, okay, without watching any film or chatting with the guy or anything, if accuracy is your calling card, it's Bo Nix with a bullet, and it's not close. But that doesn't mean the 72% last year, the 70% the year before. That doesn't mean that's who he's going to be in the NFL. So my question to you, because you follow it dramatically more closely than me, for Nix to get to those high completion percentages, it feels like a lot of shallow crosses. It feels like a lot of swings.
Yep.
Or does he go down the field intermediate and deep and put up big percentage numbers like that?
Yeah, it's a great point. And there's a lot of context that goes into why Bo Nix's accuracy jumped up so much when he went from Auburn to Oregon. And the big thing, what the Oregon offensive system was really cool with, it spread the field for him, and then he would count the numbers pre-snap. His decisions invariably were made pre-snap. It's why he had one of the fastest, quote-unquote, release times last season in the entire FBS with one of the lowest ADOTs.
Wow.
The decision had been
What's
made.
an ADOT?
average depth at target.
Thank you.
The decision had been made for him before the snap was made. So you had that. And then, of course, he had guys like Troy Franklin, Bucky Irving that were breaking tackles after they made that quick catch and then getting the yak yardage for him. That's why the accuracy was juiced. And that offensive system itself inoculated Bo Nix from the issues we saw at Auburn, which was sitting back in the pocket, having to go across the field, do his progressions, and then put up with the pressure. Sometimes at Auburn, you saw him get ragdolled in the pocket, get hit from the blind side, different stuff like that. And then he had issues going down the field as well with the ball.
Thor Nystrom, the website, fantasypros.com/Thor500, if you would like access to what you're hearing, but from a visual standpoint, and a 500 deep rookie player comp sheet, or player comp list. fantasypros.com/Thor500.
And the current edition of Fantasy Football Weekly's got Thor and I breaking down the tight ends in this draft, and there are some notable names beyond Brock Bowers, who's like, he's the big one. I think he goes to the Jets, right?
Yes, I would say so.
I think Jets are the likely spot. Okay, so let's go here back to Vikings. Let's assume the price to move up is just too high. Kwesi's going to hold 11 and 23. Give me some names that you think make sense for a team that needs help in a lot of different spots. We don't really have a starting guard, defensive end, cornerback. We got a lot of holes to fill. What do you think the Vikings do at 11 and 23 if they hold those spots?
If they were to hold their cornerbacks to look at, Terrion Arnold is a guy that I like. The back pedal with him is so smooth. It was like he came out of the womb backpedaling. Very smart guy. And the Alabama staff, which is...
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah, that's a tough delivery right there.
Yeah.
The Alabama staff absolutely loved him. Kool-Aid McKinstry was the cornerback there that everyone loved coming into the season. Terrion Arnold was clearly better than him on that awesome Alabama defense last year.
Yep.
He'd be a guy I'd point to. Cooper DeJean from Iowa is another guy that I think Brian Flores in particular is really...
love him. The versatility.
Would love him. You can play Cooper on the outside. You can play him in the slot. You can play him at free safety. You can also put him in the box in stack box situations. He gets after the passer. He does not mind flying around and hitting running backs. He's also tremendous on special teams, including a fabulous punt returner.
At 23, if I could just pick a player that I think could reasonably be there at 23 for the Vikings, Cooper DeJean.
Yes.
That's my pick.
It would be such a good... You look at Flores' defenses over the years. That is the type of guy that invariably he fetishizes.
Yeah, and I just think it's such a good match here, and I love the versatility, and that's just such a big thing, and you hit it right away. Brian Flores, its defense is built on players who can do lots of different things, wear a lot of different hats. It's why Harrison Smith is still productive in this league. That's what he's been so good at for 10 years. I love Cooper DeJean here at 23. I don't think you have to take him at 11. At 11, if the Vikings hold 11, and let's just put Cooper DeJean in at 23.
Yes.
What's 11 look like?
11 for me would be more, assuming that we've gotten boxed out of the quarterbacks, the top four. You cannot reach for one of the quarterbacks there.
No.
Right? So for me, the where you could get the value there at a position of need, it would probably be the right tackle guy who initially converts into guard. Talking about a guy like Fatanu or Fuaga.
What about Barton?
One of those types of guys. Barton,
Duke?
I would trade back a little bit for him into the late teens, but I love his game.
Yeah.
I think that's where you could get him. That guy was tremendous in college and tested like a banshee as well. Tested better than we thought he was going to. He also gives you 5-position versatility. In the ACC, was tremendous at left tackle. At the end of his career, people forget as a freshman, he started and was a very good center. So he can go all 5 positions, and I think would acquit himself pretty decently.
Okay, so per this scenario that they can't get one of the 3 quarterbacks everybody's talked about ad nauseum seemingly for all of our lives, and so they stay at 11 and 23. Well, then a trade back possibility to get some action on Friday with rounds 2 and 3. I mean, that I'm not going to say it's probable, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, which would lead me to somebody I started discussing this week, and I don't really know where he's going to be drafted, but it feels like Friday. I'm talking about Chris Jenkins Jr., the defensive tackle from Michigan. Now, his father was Carolina Panthers immortality. I mean, he was a 2-time, 3-time All-Pro. He was a nose tackle like Pat Williams, who had 3 technique twitch, and I loved his dad's game. Chris, I don't know, why the mockers or the 500 board comp or whatever. I don't know where you have him, but I mean he's from a Michigan defense where there are a lot of really good players, and he was one of them. And he has the pedigree, and I'm very, very infatuated with the way he plays the game. Chris Jenkins Jr., what do you think of him?
Yeah, I love how you set that up because you hit all the high points. The twitch and the pedigree. Boy, is he twitched up. That guy, you guys know the Bruce Feldman Freak List.
Yep.
He was a multiple-time entrant on it. And, of course, the NFL Bloodlines as well. And then being on the Michigan, that nasty defense they had. Not only did you see the juice that he had, he also plays assignment football. They have their linebackers flowing to the ball. He knows how to hold gap integrity. A lot of these three techniques that you come in, you love their ability to shoot those gaps, get after the quarterback, but they don't hold gap integrity on run concepts.
Yeah.
Chris Jenkins, you see both of that. I have him number 41 on my big board.
All right.
Early in the second round.
Yeah.
That is absolutely a guy I would target and a guy that I think fits the Vikings well. And of course, a desperate position of need for the Vikings as well.
Right.
And speaking of that second round grade, people aren't talking about it enough. The Vikings have a real chance to trade down from 23 because after 23 they're going to go 85 picks without a selection. And I know they traded up, right? But that doesn't mean you can't trade down later if the draft doesn't fall the way you thought it might. And the guy at 23 just isn't right there. There is a trade down scenario, and that would bring a guy like Chris Jenkins into play, right?
100%. And I wouldn't negate that possibility either. People might forget, but it was reported out there that Houston contacted Minnesota about that trade. Of course, they were trying to set up their subsequent trade for Stephon Diggs, our old friend there.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and the Vikings, of course, accepted it both to put themselves in a better position for a potential trade up, but also it was a decent value on the trade chart. So it was one of those, Kwesi being an analytic guy, it's like that gives us more flexibility, the potential trade up at the correct price point. That's why they did that. But yeah, that does not negate the possibility of a trade down if you get shut out for a trade up for a quarterback.
All right, so we've already talked about several of the quarterbacks here. And we've already said 11's way too early for Penix or Nix if the big four are gone. Where don't have to put it to a team, but where do you think those players will go and should go, Penix and Nix, as that next tier of guys?
I think they both end up going in the second round. I don't buy the first round stuff on them. Now, teams do make egregious mistakes in the first round every year.
Yeah.
The Vikings,
especially at quarterback,
have done it. Yeah, especially at quarterback. I'm not going to bring up some of the Vikings stuff with that in the past, but it does happen. But especially in the case of Bo Nix, in my opinion, that would be egregious. I do have an early second round on Michael Penix. You can justify that based on the arm talent. There is some stuff you're going to have to work on there. And of course, there's a little bit of an elevated age. Well, with both of them. But Penix was in college for 6 years. In the first 4 of those, he had the season-ending injuries.
Yeah, which is no small concern. And I've got a lot of mechanical concerns on Penix. I really think he's somebody who needs to sit for a year and really iron out the mechanics for him.
Yeah, there's a lot of upper body action in his throwing, and it's the reason why you see the accuracy depreciates more and more the more that his feet are moving on a throw, even when they're shuffling, but certainly when they are on the move. Guy like J.J. McCarthy, guy like Caleb Williams, those guys are awesome when they are on the run. The accuracy, they retain it while they're going. Michael Penix cannot be moving when he is throwing.
Now, lastly, speaking of quarterbacks, Keaton Slovis. I don't know how much time you put into him. I put in a fair amount this week, just looking deep at just to fortify an opinion where it's, into 2020, we heard how deep the wide receiver draft was. They were right. Tight ends last year, the consensus from the inside was right. Well, that's been the case from the inside and the outside for a year and change about these quarterbacks, which means assuming we're going to have accuracy here and a bunch of quarterbacks are going to get second contracts as starters or high-end backups. I'm now looking at not necessarily for the Vikings, but like who's going to go on Saturday, rounds 4 on, like Cousins, and stick. And Keaton Slovis is one that's a little eye-opening to me because of his path where when he was a true freshman at USC, now we have Michael Pittman Jr., we have Amon-Ra St. Brown, we have Drake London, and we have Velus Jones Jr. Okay, so they all are NFL players, all right? There are one of two ways to look at it. Well, yeah, of course he's good because he had all them. It's not that easy. You still have to make the plays. Don't know what the offensive line was like at that time. And he threw for 30 TDs at, I think, age 18 or 19. All right, then Caleb Williams comes in. All right, Keaton, you're out. Goes to Pitt the year after Addison leaves. It was tough. Goes to BYU the year after Puka Nacua leaves. It was tough. Now he's coming into the draft. My contention is if you have an above-average offensive line and quality skill guys, this Keaton Slovis might have some Saturday steel to him. What do you think of him?
Yeah, Keaton Slovis is interesting, and going back to that freshman year at USC, he also stunned a bunch of guys where he came in initially, was at the bottom of the depth chart, and had a stunning rise up it in that initial training camp to upset everyone for that starting job. And of course, he had the great season initially. Then he went about his way, and it was he was wandering in the desert of college football the past couple years.
Yeah.
That's where the stock fell off.
Yeah.
For me, the thing that a bit concerns you the last couple years, the arm strength isn't great.
Okay.
But what I love seeing with him in that initial season, in that air raid system, he gets the ball out quickly with accuracy. He makes those quick decisions. The other thing in the pre-draft process, going back to the RAS stuff, 6'2.5", 223 pounds with a 93rd percentile size adjusted athletic score. The kid can move around as well. So you have the decision making, you have the accuracy in the short area, and you have athletic traits. I ended up comping him to Max Dugan from last year.
Yeah.
But I think an assistant, like as a guy who would come in and not embarrass himself, you just shuttle the ball off short. You can get out of the pocket when you need to, and he's not going to put the ball up for grabs. I do think that that's someone that you could grab late.
My man, you're fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks, PA. Appreciate
Thor Nystrom, ladies and gentlemen, up in a round of applause for amplifying the draft conversation. And you can read about all that and learn more. FantasyPros.com/Thor500. Into the second half of the radio show, we introduce Vikes Bites on KFAN.
The Fan, along with BigDeck.com, they want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword fun. How fun would it be to win $1,000? Use that keyword, fun, at KFAN. Welcome back, 9 to noon. It is time for Vikes Bites, which is presented by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. You can go to thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com, learn about regenerative agriculture, learn about elite beef. You can shop online, or you can find Thousand Hills Beef at your local co-op or Coburn's location. Thank you, Thousand Hills. I love you. And Charch, jumping into Vikes Bites right now. Reports yesterday, the Vikings might be trying to trade up in the draft for a top 5 pick and secure said top 5 pick before the actual draft begins next Thursday. So if they're doing that, that has to be pick 3, right? Ensuring that they don't get sniped. What do you think about that, Charch?
Well, I think it depends on how much you like J.J. McCarthy. Speaking of elite beef, if you love McCarthy, then, I guess you can, as a 4 quarterback draft, you could probably go to 4 and make sure that you get one of those 4 big quarterbacks. So, still, I'd like to find a way to get to Drake May, but it would certainly suggest if you're going to move into 5, you're going to find your way to a quarterback one way or another, and maybe it happens sooner than later. But as we know, most of those trades go down on draft day. I would be surprised if that trade comes down beforehand, and maybe if it does, Nordo, it's because they can't get to 4. They can only get to 5, and now they still need some time to navigate their way from 5 to 4 or earlier beyond that. So, this is not breaking news that the Vikings would like to move up. This is what we've been talking about for 3 months now.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to believe, nothing's happened to this point. I'm inclined to believe that we are not going to see action before draft day.
Okay. Vikes Bites.
Vikes Bites.
Thank you, Thousand Hills. Well, let me extend upon that then, because that's been a conversation, a couple of feasts in a row, Charge, where it is the effort or the inclination, the idea of moving up into the draft for one of those quarterbacks. Yeah. And you've talked a bit about not necessarily pessimism in the idea of it itself per se, as much maybe the pessimism involved in them being able to get that deal done. So if the deal is not done, who is your favorite non-quarterback prospect in this draft?
If the Vikings hold at 11 and 23, and I contend there's a much better chance than most people realize that they do, or trade down than I think people realize, the guy that I'm interested in at 11, I want them to go, again, if we can't get one of the 4 big quarterbacks, of 11 and 23, I'm going to go defensive end, and then I want to go cornerback, and if I could pick my name at 11, I want, and I'm assuming Dallas Turner is going to be gone. He's the best edge rusher in this draft. I want the second best edge rusher in this draft because we really need one. Latu from UCLA. Let me throw this out at you. 129 pressures in 25 games. Yeah, that is staggering level of production. Amazing in tackles for loss. He led college football in pass rush win rate. I mean, this is a guy built to go after the quarterback. Amazing hands. The only real knock on Latu is that he was out of football for 2 years with a neck injury. And, I'm not a doctor, but, it certainly sounds like he's cleared all the medical stuff. And if you're comfortable with the medicals on him, this is a great immediate impact pass rusher that this team desperately needs with Danielle Hunter gone. We've got to rebuild that position. Latu is my guy at 11 if the Vikings do end up holding there and they can't get one of the big four quarterbacks.
You're going to be up on that stage during the draft party at US Bank Stadium next week, and how much FOMO are you going to be experiencing if the Vikings make a play, big swing? It's Drake May, so you're loving that aspect of it. You get to spend multiple segments thinking about what that's going to look like. Yeah. But then you see the Latus of the world. You see these guys falling off the board. You strike me as a guy that will be having some FOMO as you watch the first round ticker on Thursday.
I want a quarterback. I mean, we all do, right? I'd love to find a way to reboot that quarterback position with Williams or May or Daniels or McCarthy. There's the other side of the equation is just the cost to get there, what you have to give up, and the willingness of these other teams to move, to me, are all major concerns. And I will have some FOMO. When Drake May is a member of the Commanders, I'm going to feel a little bit of sadness that he didn't find his way to the Vikings, because those are scenarios that I want to have. Kirk's gone. I want to reboot with a quality guy, and it's a 4-quarterback draft.
Yeah. Vikes Bites, presented by Thousand Hills. I got this talk back, and I'd like you to listen to it and then answer the question.
Hello, PA in Charch. I was wondering, do you think the Vikings are going to draft a running back? And if so, when? And are there any running backs that you're interested in? Thanks.
How about that? Any running backs that may suit your fancy as we look into late Friday, Saturday, and all those picks that Kwesi has on the back end?
I have one. I'll share after you.
I don't think the Vikings will use anything before like a 6th or 7th rounder at the position. With missing all the picks that they've got and knowing that this is a weak running back class, I don't think anybody's going to go before roughly then. Now, I would like to put a pick at the position, and we see late round, day 3 guys make impacts on teams all the time, including your Super Bowl winners got a 7th rounder as their starting running back. But there are some guys that I like. Bucky Irving, former Gopher for a little while, is somebody who interests me. And a little undersized and not going to bring you a lot of power, but man, he's shifty, runs low, he's muscular. I would like to see him. He led Oregon as their starting running back, and he might be somebody you can get out of like round 5 that I have some interest in. PA, is there a running back you like?
I like an individual, a rookie named Ray Davis from Kentucky, and he's on the diminutive side, 5'8", 5'9", but there supposedly is the cliched high ceiling with him.
Is he muscular?
Ray, not exactly sure, but Ray Davis from Kentucky on Saturday. That's my take.
Ooh, I like that. Vikes Bites, brought to you by Thousand Hills. In some ways, just even talking about this, whether it's the running backs, you mentioned Latu, your favorite non-QB Charch. Do you guys feel at all like, I don't want to say less prepared or researched, but so much focus on QBs, I'm still kind of playing catch up in terms of some of the other great prospects that are out there. Have you felt that a bit too, as we've been so hyper focused on QBs, just how many good defenders that are going to be available mid-first round, some of the other positions that are out there? Have you felt like you're less in the know maybe in terms of some of those other guys that are out there?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
And this happens, for those of us that can remember pre-Kirk Cousins, which isn't that long ago, we were entering most drafts having to focus on quarterbacks because we didn't have our franchise guy. Now we're back to that. So I put a lot of extra reps in on all of the quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler and Michael Pratt, and a lot of guys, even people that could potentially be day 3 guys for us. So yeah, I don't feel like I don't feel quite as versed as I am, despite the fact that I think the likelihood is the Vikings come out of the first round with 2 defensive players. And so I do feel like I'm playing a little bit of catch up on that now.
Final bit for you. Vikes Bites. Thank you, Thousand Hills. It just, the conversation won't go away. And I found this from a news interview with WIBW in Topeka, Kansas. Dalton Reisner was promoting a charity bit that he does. And of course, down in Kansas, K-State. He's a former Wildcat. And he had this to say when talking about his current state of NFL life.
I mean, I'm a guy that realizes I'm not the best guard in the league, but I know this, Vince. I've started 75 games in my 5-year career. I don't miss games due to injury. Definitely don't miss it due to anything but injury. I'm a guy that you're going to have counted on every single Sunday. I'm going to be the first to the pile. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to block guys like Chris Jones on Sunday. And I'm not going to say I'm going to do it easily, but I'm going to block guys like Chris Jones and hold my own. And I'm just still undervalued. I mean, last year I didn't get a job till September. And the team that gave me a shot, I showed up there, and their 4-year starter, within 3 weeks, I beat him out for the job. They ended up trading him away, and I played 11 games, and they relied on me every Sunday. And, you know, I thought that things would change this offseason. Here I am in April, about to be May, and I don't have a job. And it's unfortunate, man, but you know what? In this life...
How about that? Dalton Reisner letting it all hang out a little bit. And for the most part, I can't disagree with what he's saying, but he's still on the street. And as you said, Charch, I agree. It's kind of weird.
He hit all my talking points. I think he's exactly right. Well, I want to know what the real story is here.
It has to be...
Is there something we don't know?
It has to be the amount of guaranteed money he wants. It has to be that, and you know, I've said this before. And Dalton referenced it, you know, in the clip where, you know, I beat a guy out of his job and they traded him.
It's true.
Yeah, and I love Dalton. That's partially true. I mean, he beat a guy out of his job who was hurt, and at that stage of the season, wheeling through 4 quarterbacks. You know, there was a certain thing they needed, and they also had somebody who wanted Ezra and you know, was willing to pay.
Yeah.
In knowing that, you know, his guarantee the next year with a new contract was going to be, I'm not even going to guess what the million-ish would be, but he ended up getting around 14. Okay, well, it's you know, just because the Jaguars established that's Ezra Cleveland's guard baseline,
yeah,
doesn't mean everybody else around the league thinks that is the guard baseline for a guard of that caliber. And it so I think that absolutely has to play into it for sure, because Dalton is you know, Dalton, the part of Dalton's game that he does really well is apparent. But the other side of it, you know, whether it's run blocking or pass protection, you know, that requires improvement. But it's good enough to have had him start as many games as he said, and for a passing team like the Vikings, an absolute pass first team, you would think that Dalton Reisner would be close to exactly what they want from a veteran. Mm-hmm. Yet he's not here, and he's not anywhere else.
And we've got money for him.
But there has to be a money component to it.
Do you think it's all just logjam behind Justin Jefferson and his looming contract, and we can't spend money we don't know we have yet because you have to get Justin signed?
Right. I mean, well, look at the deals they consummated. Okay, Grenard is not a Reisner deal. Van Ginkel is closer, but it's not a Reisner deal. Cashman is closer, but it's not a Reisner deal. Jones, a 1-7, that would be on the other side of a Reisner deal, you know, where it'd be a little light. And then you get to the Jerry Tilleries and things like that. But also the Vikings like Blake Brandel. I mean, they I'm not guaranteeing he's going to start, but they like his position flexibility meshed with what he requires financially. So that, and then you have the draft too coming up. So that all plays into it. Excellent work with Vikes Bites. Kevin Lynch from Bally Sports North will be here at 11 o'clock. And that's when we will unfurl a preview of the Timberwolves and the Phoenix Suns in the postseason beginning tomorrow on KFAN at 2:30. Meanwhile, some more football from Buffalo Wild Wing Savage and a pre-draft feast on KFAN is next.
PA Charch, this is Ryan from Cottage Grove here. Thinking about Vikings draft strategies for trading up. As a lifelong Bears fan living in the Twin Cities, I was thinking, what about both first this year their first next year, and Sam Darnold for the Bears' #1 pick. If you're Kwesi, would you make that deal? And if you were Poles, would you take that deal? Terrified the Bears are going to ruin another generation of quarterback. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
If only for the hilarity, that was a fantastic talkback, and sounds like definitely a disgruntled, downtrodden, beaten down Bears fan who's like hearkening to the days of Bob Avellini, with a level of concern with what the Bears do with the first overall pick in the draft. That's a talkback. We have another.
Good morning, PA Charch and Nordo. This is Judson Gibson. PA, you've been waiting on the reality, so here it is. If Kwesi doesn't get this pick right, we're going to try to convince ourselves during the offseason, have these cool sounders. But in the end, it's going to end up with Pat Micheletti with a trunk full of T-shirts with some sort of half quarterback, half rattlesnake combination that he can't move, and us in depression.
Judson, thanks for your dedication to 9 to Noon from Mississippi on the free iHeartRadio app. He's tweeting, he's texting, he's listening basically every single day to 9 to Noon, but certainly FM 100.3 KFAN, and I certainly with talkbacks. Or just like, in the salad days, in the old school days of KFAN when we would take phone calls, you would get people occasionally like rattling through bits.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard that many 9 to Noon bits in a 30-second span where he's like, I'm going to give you the reality. All right. Well, here's the gist of that. Is, I've said several times is, when you're chatting with somebody and, it's not contentious, but you might have opposite opinions, or you're chatting, about why is this happening, because it's good or it's really good or really bad. And then you'll get people to say, well, here's the reality, okay? Which pretty much trumps everything that you want to think or say. So I back off and I'm like, wow, man, I'm 58. I've been waiting a long time for the reality. Let me take a deep breath and hear what the reality is. All right, well, Judson laid that out beautifully. And then the Pat Micheletti reference was Mondiacs Go Crazy, where, I came up with the term Mondiacs. Nordo did a parody to it, and then we just built off of it because we're KFAN raised.
Yeah.
About Mondiac T-shirts, and then he couldn't play a lick, and all the boxes of T-shirts are in Pat Micheletti, metaphorically, are in Pat Micheletti's garage, taking up a bunch of space because, we can't even send them overseas for those who are in search of clothes to get free clothes. So I can't even remember what the take was because I was so immersed in the bits that it was unfurling over the course of 30 seconds. Thank you, Judson.
Was he referencing Spencer Rattler with the rattling in there? Was that what was he going? Was that a deep dive on Spencer Rattler?
Yeah. Well, see, there were 3 bits in there, and 2 of them just hit me like a metaphorical 2x4.
Yeah.
I couldn't get the middle one with the noise. But I think the noise might have been the Rattler.
I think it might have been the Rattler.
Might have been the snake.
I think they want the South Carolina kid. I think that's it.
Hey, from your notes today, the Tolstoy.
Yeah.
Define or explain to me how the Giants can get out of the Daniel Jones contract,
sure,
relatively cheaply, easily, or whatever.
Yeah.
After this season, right?
Right.
Wow.
So, and it's why the Giants are more in play at quarterback than most people realize. There's a real chance the Giants at pick number 6 end up looking at a quarterback and just saying, okay, fine, we're going to double down. We'll have 2 quarterbacks. We'll let J.J. McCarthy learn from the bench if we need to. Or maybe McCarthy's just playing better and they have just a competition. But Daniel Jones' contract is pretty significant this year. But after that, next year, he's basically totally cuttable.
Wow.
I think that it would be, they wouldn't cut him this year.
Yeah.
Now, Jones has not had more than 15 touchdowns in a season in 4 years.
Yeah.
That
was a bad pick.
It was a bad pick.
It cost Peaches his job.
You know what else was even worse was re-upping him after beating the Vikings in the playoffs.
Unbelievable.
It was a mistake.
Well, yeah, because it was Jones or Barkley, and it was really right at the thrust of devaluing running backs.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely no way does the running back who can catch it and pick up the blitz and run, and he's shifty, but we got some injuries. No way are we going to give him that grandiose contract and franchise the quarterback.
Right.
They went the other way. And now Barkley's gone. He's in the division, so he's going to make them pay. And Jones probably won't be on the team after this or next year.
So the reason this is really salient for Viking fans that the Giants could really be looking at a quarterback is
huge.
The Vikings are trying to move all the way up from 11 to go get one of the 4 big quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's huge.
The Giants only have to move up
2
spots.
Right, because we discussed this a little bit 9 to noon yesterday because this has been a thing, Giants potentially in need. Like, let's look at outside of the Vikings and some obvious teams, Raiders and Broncos.
Yeah.
Who needs a quarterback? Okay, well, it's first and foremost, how do you get out of the Jones bit? Because you need a quarterback.
Right.
And outsiders, insiders, everybody knows that you need a quarterback. Okay, well, you just eloquently define that. The key here with Arizona, in my estimation, is, or the Chargers right in front of them, is if you believe those 2 teams or one of them is absolutely dead set to take the best or second best perceived receiver in the draft, getting said receiver at 11 is markedly more difficult than 6.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it would take is we want to go from here to here. You go here. The Chargers in the middle. These guys are going to take this guy,
right,
and you can have the other one, and they may love the other one. So I think the road you're going down right now is if you want the Vikings to trade up to the top 4-ish to get a quarterback and really don't care what they give, just get there and get it. This is a late developing significant problem point that I believe is more than a hyperbole, speculation, and or subterfuge.
And I'll give you beyond that. Tennessee at 7 could be a threat at quarterback as well.
Could be. They're all over offensive line from what I understand.
Everybody, and by the way, they do need offensive line
and the
help.
Bowers bit.
Joe Alt would be a great fit for them.
Yep.
Totally get that. But there's still a scenario where they look at Will Levis and go, God, we cannot sign up for another year of that.
Yeah, and that generally doesn't happen after 1 year. I mean, it would be next year, where they generally give them 20 to 25 to 30 before they check he can't do it or he can. I like the Georgia tight end at this spot a lot. Mm-hmm. Because if you have a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarterback who can move a little bit, and you purport that he's going to be better in his second year than his first year, well, there's really nothing better to give him than a Kelsey-esque tight end who can play wide receiver. And I mean, the Bowers bit, the more I learn about him, I guess he's unbelievable.
He is unbelievable. I mean, he's great.
Harbaugh might take him at 5.
Not impossible.
Right.
Not impossible. I think he probably finds his way to the Jets at 10.
We'll see.
But Brock Bowers is going to be he's as promising as really almost any tight end that's come out in the last 10, 15 years.
Let's segue to the Timberwolves beginning the playoffs tomorrow. And Kevin Lynch, former Mr. Basketball in the state of Minnesota, nice enough to make the trek here to Buffalo Wild Wings and Savage for what transpires and turns into a Friday front court feast. Wolves and Suns, 2:30 tomorrow, KFAN. And we'll bring Kevin Lynch on site, on air, on demand, and on fire after this.